So in development as a type of property and strategy, it's been a really interesting market to still be able to buy and have so many choices of properties that we can buy for development. So in adding that value and creating something, we're not as reliant on the market, which is nice. In this market, the biggest thing we struggle with as being a buyer's agent is when I flip our hat around, I've spoken very much from a landlord and owner's perspective, but we're on the other side as a buyer's agent driving down people's prices, and a lot of people still have their expectations up here, and they're factoring in value based on the apartment potential, the potential to develop apartments on a site, but when we want to go and do a duplex or a triplex, that potential's overpriced. So we need to. It's a lot more difficult. A lot of people think, oh, you can just walk down the street and buy a property that stacks up. It's not the case. It takes a lot of intense looking and a lot of intense negotiation to find those deals. So I'm very much focusing with our clients on smaller duplex and triplex sites where we don't need commercial financing, where we can control the time frames, where we're not overcommitting, where we're limiting our risk and we can move in and out quickly. And for many reasons, I'd suggest if you're ever going to do a development, to buy it and do it straight away, not buy it and hold it for 5 years because you've got that crappier property in the meantime with all those negatives that I spoke about. Does that make sense? So I'm generally staying away from higher density development just because of the risk. There are larger end developers that can do things very well in that space, and it's not something that I would suggest that mum and dad investor gets into. So I'm going to bring Logan up for a bit of a change from me. He's just going to quickly run through some ins and outs of this recent deal that he's done in finding for a client. Give you the clicker.
So this particular client was looking for a retain and build. So they specifically wanted a duplex sort of property around the Belmont area. They had a budget of $550, and there's only very small pockets of Belmont that are actually zoned just R20. A lot of it's split zoned, which made it a lot more difficult because, as Jarrad sort of said, a lot of the time we were compared to the higher density, which obviously makes it, with the Shire of Belmont, the requirements to actually develop at the higher density is actually quite hard. They make it really hard to retain the house. There's like a 6 metre setback and all that sort of stuff comes into play, so there's no way of retaining the house effectively when you're doing the higher density. And the price, you're holding a vacant block, and the price to build and all that sort of stuff goes right up as well. So what we did was we sort of went through the whole of Belmont, and we split basically 855 is the minimum we needed in terms of square meterage to actually do a duplex development. So what we did was get every single property in the whole of Belmont that was 855 square meters or more, and then we split them into hot, warm and cold. So hot is effectively properties that are on the market wanting to be sold that fit our criteria, as well as other real estate agents. So I actually build relationships with other real estate agents. Warm are people that have tried to sell in the last 6 to 12 months. So I then actually go and door knock and direct mail and sometimes even cold call those clients and sort of say to them, look, if you are interested in still selling, I've got buyers obviously that are genuine. They've engaged me to sort of source property for them, and avoid home opens, avoid the selling costs, avoid all that stress. And then cold is effectively properties that have been, basically been owned, or the person's lived there for 3 to 5 years. That's sort of the magical number that we real estate agents use when looking for listings, is 3 to 5 years for people wanting to move in or out of the area. And again, just simple mail or door knock or cold call, just saying, would you be interested in selling if we had the right price for you, all that sort of stuff. Um, and then as you can see, this property was actually listed for about 580,000. A lot of Belmont, the expectation for a lot of the sellers in the area is around 600,000 for properties, 3x2s, 4x2s, or even 3x1s, which this one was. As you can see, it was on a big block. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I'm not too good with math, but it was more than 900 square meters, or just on. And our initial offer was about 510,000. It was a little bit cheeky, but we sort of just wanted to test it, see how it goes down. Didn't go down well. They counted back at 580, and we counted back at 520, and then the seller, went on holiday and had no intention of selling from then on. The agent, for whatever reason, I called the agent and said, "Oh, well, he's still on the market," because he said it was coming off. He said, "Oh, the owner's gone overseas for a month or two, but told me to leave it up just to see if anyone else is interested." And I thought, okay, no worries. So we continued our search. We looked at other properties, put other offers out, dealt with some very interesting agents. One property was literally 10 houses up or down, depending on which way you look at it. But and they were asking offers. So I thought, what better than that? We'll put in an offer. So we offered 530 because I thought, all right, let's be reasonable. And they counted back at 700. So yeah, it was quite, and there was some very interesting follow-up calls from that particular agent. But that's another day. And then just through emailing, texting, calling that agent that we originally put the offer in on, he actually came back to us because I called him and he was actually away in Ireland or something, and he was on holiday, and he actually answered his phone and said, "Look, something's changed for my seller and he's contacting me, and I'm assuming it's because he's wanting to sell again and he's ready to take the offer." So I had a budget of 550, and the seller was actually genuine and basically told the agent he'd take no less than 540. So I already knew we were already within our budget. We were still getting 153,000 return, which was about 18%, 17%, which is usually what we try and work off, because it still leaves a bit of leeway that if things do soften further, that we can still get out at 15, even 12 to 15%. When you sort of get below 15% return, it just becomes a lot more riskier. Then you're sort of at risk of being a 10% return if it does soften during the construction process and whatnot. But yeah, so the owner came back, said 540 no less, and I thought, you beauty, closed the deal, and that was that. So conditions for success. So these are sort of things that a lot of buyers don't consider, or some do, depending on how savvy you are. Settlement subject to development or subdivision approval. Doesn't get through all the time, and sometimes it does, but it is something we try. A lot of agents will pick up on it and say no, because they obviously know how lengthy that process can be. But the idea is to effectively have them paying, basically costing you nothing during the development process, which can take up to 3 to 4 months, sometimes quicker, sometimes longer, but as a general rule, 3 to 4 months. And what better than to basically be getting the development approval, and as soon as it settles, you can effectively start developing and getting the ball rolling. 7 to 14 day due diligence period, so it gives me a good opportunity to check like water connections, sewer connections, making sure that all, if there's no gas, because a lot of older properties still use electrics or hot plates and whatnot. A lot of people want gas nowadays, so checking little things like that, and obviously checking the existing property and just checking how much, as Jarrad keeps going on about, the rentability and what needs to be done to get it rented out to a decent tenant at a decent price. Obviously, the standard building and pest inspections, access for trades. So during the settlement process, we obviously want to get everything quoted, whether it be kitchens, bathrooms, tiling, painting and whatnot, so that as soon as we settle, all that work can start and you're not getting quotes. And builders as well. So getting builders through, giving us full access. And the other side is, if you are renting out the front house, being able to effectively be advertising it for rent during the settlement process, so that as soon as it settles, the tenant moves in. So, and then you're not out of pocket or don't have any sort of holding costs. And other disclaimers are simple things like, you know, the buyer has full access to all documents they need to do a lot of this stuff as well. Back to that Belmont one, you know, they have the option now to develop at a later date and obviously get quite a big return, as you can see, about 17%, or just subdivide and sell the vacant block and someone else can build out the back. You know, yes, your return per year is better subdividing and selling the vacant block, but obviously it's not as large as if you built it yourself and then sold it as one whole piece. So, that's it.
Thanks for filling us in, Logan. Yeah, Logan's one of our buyers agents and works very hard to get good deals in this market. So, thought I'd touch on a couple of twists. We're nearing our end. A couple of twists on the development side that you may not be aware of is that and this I'm particularly really excited about, and it takes, when I love property, it takes a lot to get me really excited, but, or not much, but this is a change to the R codes that is currently proposed and has finished its comment period. And by all reports that I can find, it's very, very likely to go through. And what they're doing is they're changing the minimum number of aged dwellings permittable in a group from 5 to 2. And what that means is that a lot of these retirement village or retirement aged properties that you see around, it's really difficult for the mum and dad investor to get into doing them because you have to do a group of 5 or more. So immediately means commercial finance, it means, you know, a much bigger project, and what the proposed change will allow is for you to do it on a group of 2 or more. So it's really going to open up the options of housing for our aged, which I think is a big positive for the community. And it significantly can improve the returns that you can get on a property. So let's take the example where, because under the aged dwellings, it actually gives a 1/3 reduction to the minimum and average site area permissible. So on Logan's 928 square metre Belmont property, yeah, it was 928, I'm good at numbers, but that's why I check him. With an R20 zoning, it takes our minimum area required from 350 to 233, and it takes the average area from 450 to 300. So what that means is if we divide 928 by 300, we can fit 3 and do a development of 3. It turns it from a duplex to a triplex and significantly will improve the returns on the right property. And any one of those properties can be as small as 233. So it'll give us a lot more options. It's the most exciting change that I've seen coming up, and I'm getting back to the problem with my parents. I'm concerned that they're going to be hitting me up to do one of these for them. And the other major benefit for the aged is it's going to give them housing options, more housing options in areas that they're used to living. At the moment, they have to go and be a part of a big group where there's high strata fees, deferred management costs, it's a bit of a nightmare for them now. I can see this really changing things. So the other thing, and this is probably, I've never really seen anyone talk too much about it, is the R code variation that's possible. And this is where you can take a 15% return that you might get and double that, which gets me, again, really excited. So this is one of our this is the specific control policy. It's called Control Policy 2.2, and it allows a 5% variation to that average lot size and the minimum lot size, one minimum lot to be varied and the overall average to be varied. So, and the big caveat on that is it needs to provide, you have to prove to the West Australian Planning Commission that it provides a beneficial outcome for the community. So that's why you need to work in with, we prefer to consult with a town planner and to get their advice, and all the better if we're making our purchase subject to development approval, because then we remove that risk as well. And it can just have a massive impact on your overall returns. This is a very easy deal for someone to do because it's a lower price. This is just land. It's down in Waikiki. It's the next suburb over from where the client lives. He was walking his dog down the beach and he's like, Jarrad, I remember back to the coffee you were telling me about the 5% variation. Will this work? We had our town planner look at it. I took a look at it. It was really just a no-brainer, because even at asking price of $299, the agent was advertising it not with having any development potential, not having any of this priced in, and we're estimating $20,000 for subdivision costs and 10 months to do it. So factoring that in, we expect that each of the separate lots of land, we're just going to divide it straight down the middle, nothing complex. It's 900, so that's going to be a decent 450 block either side. And the total value there is 440. So he's going to make 100,000, potentially make 100,000, which is a 30% return, and very impressive. And that's I've factored in holding costs there too. So you don't need a huge amount of money to get into stuff. If you look to use little twists like this, even on top of the other formula, then you can really increase and maximise your returns. Does that make sense?